Greetings, programs, and welcome back to another episode of the Awesome Friday podcast. My name is Matthew, and I am your host. And joining me is Simon, otherwise known as Captain Hot Takes. He's been demoted. How are you? How are you, Simon?
Yeah, there's not going to be many hot takes today, I'm afraid. I'm okay. It's been a busy weekend. I packed my wife off to the spa today to celebrate her creating two humans. Good job,
yes, it
that
is.
person.
We are recording this and it is still Mother's Day. So if you have a mother, or if you are a mother, happy Mother's Day. And
Yes.
if you have a mother, go give her a hug, because you only get
Aww.
one, and you may not always be able to. So,
dude, you should come over for dinner. Come for dinner. I'm cooking for my wife, and I'm making mascarpone chicken, which is a butterfly chicken breast filled with cheese and sage, wrapped in prosciutto, and then cooked in basil and olive oil, and then simmered in white wine.
That sounds delightful, but I'm making steak for my wife.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. Also, good. I don't know why you cook your food in a guy called Basil instead of the herb named Basil. But anyway.
Oh, okay. Herb has an H, and it's Basil, for the love of all colonial people everywhere.
Yeah. Two countries separated by a common language.
But it has been a wonderful thing this week, because yesterday was Eurovision Song Contest, which is my Super Bowl. I watched the whole thing, all 4 hours of it, and I loved every second of it. I am such a sucker for that show. And I've always loved the Eurovision, and then you made me watch the movie, which I thought was going to be terrible, turned out to be amazing, with Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams, and that movie has somehow made me love Eurovision even more. It's a beautiful partnership between art and life.
It's a perfect distillation of Eurovision as well.
And what's really nice about the Eurovision movie is that it's quite hard to explain to people outside of Europe what Eurovision is. I've seen so many articles in Canada and America this week. It's like, I'm trying to understand what Eurovision is, and I can't. Blah, blah, blah. It's because it's like you take the worst songs you can get together in Europe and then put it into a competition and vote for your best one. And it's like the Gay Olympics. It's completely over the top. It's got so much history to it, and it's got a sound to it. And whoever made the Eurovision movie absolutely gets that. Like, they absolutely understood what's great and funny about and ridiculous about Eurovision Song Contest. And then they put it into a great script.
I don't necessarily agree that all the songs are bad, but I get where you're coming from.
Dude,
yeah. all of the performances though are ridiculous for sure.
The songs are mostly terrible, to be fair. I mean, but you're not looking. It's a bit like when you go to karaoke in a bar. You're not looking for someone to stand up and sing something properly. You're looking for something that's got like the audience and an edge and like energy, and it's very much like that. And England this year came second to last. Luckily,
and all was right in the universe.
Well, we almost won last year, so the universe is now in balance. We came second from the top last year, but the only country below us was Germany, which was, of course, the only thing that matters. And it was a fun night.
Yeah,
fun night.
And of course, hosted in the UK this year because it was supposed to be in the Ukraine, who won last year. But obviously, there's a terrible war of aggression happening there right now. So
yes,
I will say this. The only time I've ever watched like the whole of Eurovision, or the few times I've like come over and watched it with you, but I do try to keep up. I do like go back and watch the performances, and I do think it's really fun. I've gone back and watched like multiple years like performances over, because I just like watching that kind of stuff on YouTube. But what I'm gonna say is, I don't quite want to accuse them of rigging the show. But also it does seem very convenient that Sweden won, and next year is the anniversary of ABBA's win.
Yeah,
that does seem.
Yeah,
it's I can't remember what anniversary it is. I know it's a milestone anniversary.
It's 50.
It's 50, right?
years.
So it does seem incredibly convenient that
Yeah, it
Sweden
does, doesn't it?
won just in time for a milestone anniversary for ABBA, who,
To be
no, I'm sure totally uncoincidentally, put out a new album in the last 12 months. So,
so it's I think it's partly that that's completely believable, but also Sweden this year went absolutely guns blazing. The woman who sang is a massive, massive pop star in Sweden and has across the world billions and billions and billions of streams. So this was the first year where they opened up the public bidding to people outside the UK. So we were able to vote as well. And I think that I think the thing with Eurovision is to understand that it's not about the quality of the song, it's about convincing the public to vote for you. And I I think that they understood. Okay, we'd like to have it in Sweden for the 50th anniversary, and we know the public vote is way more important than the jury vote. Turns out the jury vote loved the Swedish song anyway, so who knows about that? But I think they understood what it takes to win, and they also sent her in with an absolute storming song. It's not the kind of song you would typically say is a upbeat like Europop song, but it is an absolute like scenery chomping ballad with a big rousing chorus, which is exactly what we didn't have in our song. So, and she was interesting to look at as well. She's a very distinct personality. So
she's
I
also
think they,
won before. She's the first woman to have won
yes,
twice, I believe.
that's correct. That's correct. Johnny Logan being the other person who's won and twice, and she's good. She's like kooky and weird and interesting, and it's. I kind of wish Finland had won with the song Cha Cha Cha. I don't know if you've caught up with that song,
I
but
haven't yet.
it could have fit in the Eurovision movie perfectly. It's a typical Eurovision absolute lunacy of a song that people really connected with. So it almost won, but Sweden won just at the end.
Is it ridiculous in the double trouble kind of way, or in the Lion of Love kind of way, or in the Running with the Wolves kind of way? Which, for all
um,
of you listening at home, those are all real songs from the Eurovision movie.
It's hard to pin it down. It's one of those Europop songs that if you were medicated, you'd probably check that you hadn't taken too much that day. It was it was really something. It was really really something. So
Well,
who knows?
just remember that the song Husavik from Eurovision was Academy Award nominated, and when it was
Yes.
performed at the Oscars, it took an entire choir of children to replace Wolfgang. So do with that information what you will.
That's such a great film. If I'd had time, I would have watched the movie straight away because it's a great echo of what makes Eurovision great. It's really good.
Yeah, and it has one of Rachel McAdams' greatest line reads ever,
Like
which is
I've spent a significant amount of time a couple of weeks ago trying to work out if the elves went too far is better than oh no he's dead. Like Rachel McAdams is perhaps overlooked a little bit for her comic delivery. Like she has got excellent, exquisite tonal timing with those lines. And that second line is from Game Night. If you haven't seen Game Night, please watch Game Night. It's by the same
I'm,
people who did the recent Dungeons and Dragons, and it's
I was going
wonderful.
to say, I'm sure people are tired of us talking about Game Night already.
It's because it's probably the best comedy of modern times, and it needs to be appreciated as
It's
such.
definitely victim to its own, I believe, R-ratedness,
Yes,
which I think
yeah,
is, it's one of those films where people say, why don't they make, comedies for adults anymore? And you can say, Game
yeah,
Night is right fucking
yeah.
there. It's
It's
right
right
there.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's widely available, and it has an amazing score. And anyway, I'm just going to shut up now.
Also, Jason Bateman. Jason Bateman has brilliant timing. I know he's. I haven't seen the thing he did that you like and lots of people like. That's A Place in America, where he's
You
tried
mean,
darker
you
stuff.
mean, you mean
He has
Ozark,
this.
in which he is
Yes,
great?
thank you. Yes, Ozark. So I'm sure his dramatic acting is great, but I think he's a fantastic comic actor as well with great um, delivery. The episode of Murderville that he does with Will Arnett is Actually, I had to stop a number of times. I don't know if you've seen it. I had to stop a number of times because I was hurting from laughing. Um,
I mean,
because they
he's a very
can't hold
funny
it
guy.
together. They can't hold it together, and he's just so dry. And Will Arnett, I think, can't cope around him because they've obviously been doing this for so long, and it's fantastic, really good.
I mean, that film is well cast all around, but I'll hold it in special esteem because it's the film that introduced me to Sharon Horgan, who is, I think, amazing.
Yes, I'm absolutely not going to Google her
She's the Irish.
to
She's
find
the
out who
smart,
she is.
funny Irish woman
Oh, her,
who the
yeah,
dumbass
she's good.
invites. Whom, if
Yes,
you
yes,
have
she's
never
great.
seen, if you've never seen her TV show, um, if you've never seen her TV show, which is called Catastrophe, you should definitely look it up. It's on Prime, I believe. Um,
Right.
the setup of which is that she's a teacher living in London, and Rob Delaney is a businessman there on a business trip, and they have a week long fling, and then she gets pregnant, and then he moves to London, and they get married and start a family. And it's very, it's very much about the difficulties of parenting, but also just of like
Mm,
how are we've known each other for 10 days, how are we going to make this work type thing.
right. Sweet.
Um, but it's very very funny, and especially like it ran for 4 seasons, and Carrie Fisher plays Rob Delaney's mother in it, and she's
Oh, cool.
hilarious. And once at a certain point, it jumps ahead. Like every season, it jumps ahead a little bit. So by the third or fourth season, they have like two like small toddler children, and it like
Hmm.
I don't have children of my own, but I imagine for some people, it's going to hit a little close to home. But yeah,
What's that called? What's the show called?
it's called Catastrophe.
Right, I'll check that out. Lovely. Well, game night
Yeah,
was the first time I'd seen Jesse Plemons and anything, and that's always a pleasure. But also Billy Magnuson, who is one of my absolute favorite people to pop up in movies. I think he is wonderful. And if you haven't seen Disney's Aladdin live action remake, you should watch it for a number of reasons, but especially because Billy Magnuson basically steals the show in his 2 minute scene. He is wonderful.
mm, yeah, he's often good. I agree that that movie is much better than most people would give it credit for, um,
Hmm.
but that it's not actually great. It's just fine.
Okay.
But he also plays a smarmy CIA guy in the latest in No Time to Die, and he's perfect in
Hmm.
that too.
Yeah, yeah, he's great.
Good. Well,
Okay, shall we move into
now
our
that we've
movies?
rambled, yeah, now that we've rambled, let's leap into our movies. The first film we're going to talk about is a horror film and another entry in a long-standing franchise, which is a bit of a personal touchstone to me. Um, but Simon, why don't you take us through the basic setup of Evil Dead Rise?
I would love to. Evil Dead Rise is set in an American apartment block that's very run down and it's not been maintained, and the electricity flickers and it's structurally showing its age.
I
And
believe the word you're looking for is condemned. It's a condemned
oh,
building.
it's okay. there's a woman there living with her two children, and her partner has gone, and she's I think it's fair to say she's struggling meeting the needs of her two teenage children, male and a female, and her sister, who is a guitar technician, comes over because she needs to ask for help with an issue that she has. And in order to speak to her sister in private, the mum sends the kids out to get pizza. The kids go get pizza, but while they're in the parking garage downstairs, there's an earthquake, and the building, which is, as you mentioned, slightly condemned, just a little bit condemned, cracks open. And this is a movie of ridiculous moments where no one in their right mind would do it, but it cracks open, and the kids find this hidden room, which is the bank vault of the bank that is under the foundations of what this building is now. So of course they climb. One kid climbs down into it, and of course, he opens these lockboxes and he finds old pictures and dusty things, but he finds some vinyls, some records, and he finds a book. and it's clearly it's like bound in flesh and it's got teeth. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep that. So he brings that back up to the apartment, and out of curiosity and shall we say stupidity, he decides to uh, both play the vinyls and try and open the book. And in trying to open the book, he pricks his finger on the teeth, and the blood absorbs into the skin, and it flicks open. And at this point, any normal person would go, "Yeah, okay, my blood activated this skin covered book. This is probably the time I'm going to stop now." But if you've watched any of the Evil Deads, you know it's always unleashed by people uttering incantations. And in this movie, it's the vinyl uh, plays the priest who goes from being curious about this to discovering that he's unleashed something terrible by saying these words. And of course, the words get spoken. And the evil rises, um, and takes over the mother, and basically the entire movie, because there's another earthquake and it destroys the fire escape stairs, and it traps the elevator. So it's basically a bottle movie in this one floor apartment of this evil demonic creature trying to kill everyone, but also trying to spread itself into other dead people. And without spoiling too much, that's pretty much the whole of the movie until it moves to a finale point. And then there's some bookends. It opens with a bookend, and then it closes with a connection to that bookend. I personally found it hilariously funny. I was laughing all the way through. It's the actress who plays the mum, called Alicia Sutherland, a model, Australian model turned actor, has got tremendous physical acting qualities. And when she becomes the demon and starts using different voices, and it just feels like she's having a really good time being this demonic character. And the demon picks off these people one by one, and it's up to the sister to fight back, and fight back she does. And spoiler, I loved this movie. Loved this movie. I think there's a decision made at the end to up the stakes for the finale. I don't think that decision worked. I can think of some a slight adjustment to that without spoiling it, but it drops the pace at the end, and it can't quite stick the landing for me. But it's just such a fun movie to see this demon like pick off these people one by one. It's also terrifying and very graphic, but tonally, it's such a riot. I loved it. It might even be my second favorite Evil Dead after Army of Darkness. Now I know
I mean,
you don't feel the same way, do you? So how do you feel?
it's just interesting to me that that. I mean, my favorite Evil Dead is to this day is still Evil Dead 2, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
the one that straddles the horror comedy line the best.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think Army of Darkness, which to be clear, I love, but for me it skews a little too comedy, and in the same way I think this one skews a little too horror. It's much closer to Evil Dead 1 in terms of its tone, and just the cadence of the funny bits. Um, but I mean, it's still a great movie. It's still a great time watching it. I ended up purchasing it, and I have no regrets. I will definitely
Yeah.
watch it a bunch of
Yeah.
times. And you're 100% right. The Alyssa Sutherland in particular, I think everyone in the movie understood the assignment, but I think Alyssa Sutherland in
Yeah.
particular um, understood the assignment. She has a couple of legitimately amazing line reads once she's the demon.
Yes.
That at one point she her youngest not toddler but under 10-year-old daughter is like, "Are you okay, mommy?" And she's like, "Nothing a hug and a kiss from you wouldn't fix." And just the look on her face as she says it is incredible. And yeah, just her physicality throughout the way she is able to contort her body and just seem otherworldly is pretty
Mm.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and it's brutally gory, and that's not a complaint for me. It's just a
Mm.
warning to anyone for whom it might be a thing. there's several scenes that made me legitimately squirm in my seat. Um, but yeah, honestly, I just like if I have a problem with this movie, it's that it wasn't funny enough. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but and also like when you say the pace drops in the third act, that I think is a bit of an understatement. There's a point at which it basically just stops, and
Yeah,
it never really
you're right.
recovers.
Yeah, you're right.
Um, and there's also a point where um, it's never not making references to the previous movies, to the original trilogy of movies, especially. But there's a moment where there's a wonderful moment of fan service that's also nestled in among several other moments of like you didn't need to do this fan service. Like it becomes a little bit fan servicey towards the end in a way that I think takes away from it.
Oh, I didn't feel that.
But like again, these are. It sounds like I'm pretty down on the movie, but I'm not. I liked it. I thought it was great. Um, I'm super happy that it's made something like $130 million against its $20 million budget. We'll probably
Oh,
get a
that's
bunch
great.
more of them.
That's awesome.
And I really hope that Lily Sutherland and or Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland and
Mm-hmm.
I think basically everyone else in it is, gets a big career bump from it. Um,
Mm.
and there's a number of like just really great horror moments, and I would say I think I like the whole movie, but I think honestly the best part might be the opening 10 minutes, which could basically just be a short film set in the universe.
Mm.
Is kind of a perfectly executed like 8 minute Evil Dead short, and I loved that part of it.
Mm. Also has the best title cards of any movie you've seen this
Oh
year.
yeah, title card is great. But if nothing else, it also like does really like go all in with the old school cinematography tricks that
Mm.
the first
Yeah.
ones really went with, and in particular, it's just that like instead of being camera mounted on a board tied to a bicycle, it's just a drone now, but it kind of works. Like it works really well actually.
Yeah, it does. That
Um,
reveals right. That made me laugh.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a great movie. It's really well performed. It it could have been a little better balanced for me. I guess that's all I'm trying to say. A little better balanced and a little better paced, and I think it would have been a great movie. But it's still a good movie, and you should totally watch it. That's my entire review. I mean,
Yeah, a lot of this is subjective. It might be too graphic. I actually found the opening 10 minutes almost too much because it's not really played for laughs at all. It is
it's
very scary. It's very, very scary, the opening 10 minutes. I found it way more like graphic and scary than any other part of the movie, including there's a part of the movie that has been doing the rounds as being this thing that people can't watch. It's totally fine. Well, I found it fine, but I found the opening 10 like genuinely nerve-wrackingly scary.
yeah. I think for me, I think the reason I like it so much is that it's the only part of the film that actually feels like they're trying something even remotely new. Like they're not trying to be a horror comedy at that point. Because
Oh, interesting.
I think what it boils down to for me is that it does feel a little bit like the funny bits are kind of shoehorned in at times in this one, and
I don't
right
agree with that. I
and
don't agree
like
with that at all. No.
and some of them are still legitimately great, but it does feel like it was written as a gory horror movie with comedy peppered in after the fact to me. And again, this is a very subjective nitpick. It's still a good movie. You should still totally say it because some of those scenes are legitimately great, and I don't want to
Mm,
spoil any of them because
yeah,
they are great. But for
yeah,
me, it's a good film with great moments rather than a great film. Is all I'm
yeah.
trying to say.
I did like it more than you. I thought the humor landed much better for me, but I totally agree about the final 20 minutes. It completely the brakes go on, and I there when you watch it, there is a choice made, and if you can imagine them going to the same place in the same technique, but having to fight multiple people instead of one thing, I think it would have been so much more pacey and so much more interesting. And really, they could have ended with the same way they ended the film, but um,
I
I
just think
also
they
don't
didn't
think
have
they had
the.
the
I just think they
budget.
didn't have the budget. Yeah, like
Yeah,
the thing that happens. It's hard to talk about without spoiling the movie a
yeah.
bit, but
They didn't have the.
in many ways, much more than any of the previous films, it's a much more like Lovecraftian thing that happens,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
But
I just don't
they,
think they had the budget to like make it happen in a meaningful way. You never
yeah,
actually really fully see what's
yeah,
happening. A lot of cutting around.
yeah.
Um, and
It does
honestly,
a
like
lot.
if there was ever a film to make cheap looking effects and then show them to us, it would be an Evil Dead film,
Yes.
right? Like just show me what you're doing. It doesn't honestly. I think I would like it more if they were like, you know what, this is ridiculous, but we're just going to put it on screen. But instead, they seem to edit around it and cut around
Yeah.
it in a way that I find very disappointing.
It's weird because the rest of the movie, the effects are really, really solid. There's some great vomit tech, three different colors of vomit. There's some great
Great makeup
phys-
effects too.
phys- the makeup, the physical horror is really, really good. And I think the end, they kind of painted themselves into a corner, deciding to go down a route where they couldn't really show it as a whole physically. It had to be CG, and as such, it just it didn't have the weight. It didn't have, well, like you say, we couldn't even see it. I think they should have. I think that was a bad
Yeah,
choice to end it
I was
the
going to
way they
say, how
did.
could you tell whether it had the weight or not? Because you never get to see it.
Well,
You
there's that
get to see it
shadowy
like
bit, but
you see like a shadow scramble, and that's like it. It's
yeah, yeah,
and it's in like and it's in a dark room, and it's
yeah,
it's there's just a bunch of choices that are made that I don't think 100% work. But again,
yeah,
I like this movie, so
yeah.
my recommendation is you should see it.
I loved it. I've just got a big, as I texted you, I've got a big smile on my face every time I think about it. I just had such a good time watching it. Great
Yeah, for
escapism,
me,
and
I'm 100% sure that when I'm thinking of the great moments, I'm definitely smiling. But the problem is, and this is going to sound really nitpicky, but for me, the issue is that I'm only thinking of those great moments, not the film, right?
yeah,
Like it's kind of like it's a totally fine film. It's a good film with a few legitimately great moments, and not a great cohesive whole.
hmm.
And
Well, for
I
me,
hate when this kind of happens because I hate. It sounds like I'm really negative on the movie, but it's a great time. Again, no
yeah,
regrets having purchased it. No regrets. We'll definitely watch it again. And the scenes that are great are legitimately. So there's at least one that I would say is like an all timer in terms of like
hmm,
horror line delivery followed by visual. There's one
hmm,
that's a bit like an all timer for me.
yeah.
So yeah,
So this, I do like it more. I think it's a great movie that could have been incredible. It's a 4-star movie for me, and it could have been if the ending had been handled differently, it would be a 5. Because I just adored it. But I get the feeling you're perhaps going for 3 here.
yeah. If where it's a 4 that could have been 5 for you, it's a 3 that could have
Hmm.
been 4 for me,
Right,
for sure.
that's fair.
It is the kind of thing where like maybe if we did half stars, I might consider 3.5 based on like
Yeah,
two
yeah.
or three individual scenes. But like
Hmm.
as it is, yes, 3 stars and 3 stars, and I wish it was 4. I guess might be a better way
Hmm.
to put it. Because again, it is a great film. It's super fun, and I hope that I get to see Alyssa Sutherland in particular
Yeah.
in a ton more things.
And also, it is on demand, which is where we saw it, but it's also still playing theatrically. And I think it's the kind of thing, if you can find a room with a bunch of people to watch this, a late night movie after you've had a few drinks or the other drug of your choice, legal drug of your choice, of course, I think it's the kind of thing that would play brilliantly in a room of people who are into it. But
I would say that
that's that.
that is true, but the full of people who are into it is going to be a key thing here.
Hmm.
Um, but if you manage to find like a screening that's full of horror buffs or Evil Dead fans, then yeah, this would be a great time. This would be a great time to
So,
do this.
so basically, when this gets to the Rio and the Rio shows this, go and watch that. Because the Rio is full of good people. So yeah,
Yeah,
do that.
that's true.
Good, 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 good. What a great film. Loved it.
Yeah, it's funny actually. We I was going to talk about this during our bonus ramblings, which all patrons get access to, and we have a Patreon. You can subscribe to that. Find it in the show notes. But it's funny because speaking about spoilers and video and stuff, um, and like-minded people. I don't know why this reminded me of this, but anyway, I was doom scrolling on TikTok last night, and someone posted an entire scene from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which I did not watch. As soon as I realized what it was, I paused it, and then I stopped and I commented and I just said, it's totally a dick move to record this and put it on socials like within a week of the film being out. And now my
Mm.
notifications are full of young assholes telling me that I'm a male Karen, and if it was 10 years ago, I might be right, and how I should cry
Wait,
harder. And
what?
and
Really?
honestly, I already have a hard enough time going to the movie theater, and this kind of attitude, like this, just it's just why do I ever want to go?
Wow. Yeah, that's totally right. 10 years ago, it's totally different. Like now, you can just go watch a movie and be a fucking asshole about it. So if you are listening to this and thinking Matt's a male Karen for asking not to get your phone out and record in the movie theater, do everyone a favor and stay fucking home and watch something else. Like, don't come out and bother people with your stupid fucking ideas. And the thing that absolutely drives me crazy in the cinema is someone on their phone during a movie. Like
Yeah, it's just so
it
distracting. It's
it
such a focus
absolutely
pull.
it takes me because I get so infuriated by it. I stop watching the movie, and it doesn't make me a Karen. It makes me someone who watches the movie and can turn off their device for an hour and a half. And if you can't do that, then don't fucking go to theaters, idiots.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's
I
my
haven't
that's my response.
I haven't commented back, but my favorite comment is, so I said this, and then the person who posted it was like, "Bold of you to assume it's my recording," and someone else commented like, "How is it better that you stole the recording and then posted it?" And yeah, anyway, people are
Wow.
terrible, and I'm
Yeah.
definitely reaching an age where I think that youth is wasted on the young. But anyway,
You should
that
link this episode in every response you get, so they can hear me tell them that they're fucking idiots if they think that. Please do that.
yeah. The other problem with TikTok is that I honestly think part of the problem is they're just literally children, and I feel weird about yelling at them.
No, I don't.
Uh, yeah, I know. That's because you have children, and I don't.
I
Um,
don't yell at my children though.
no, but it gives you a freedom to yell at other people's kids that I will
That does. That's
societally
true.
never have.
Uh, I
But
do love that
anyway,
freedom.
yeah. Anywho, let's move on to our next film, which is not like anything we've talked about so far. Um, and so we're going to talk about the newly released on Apple TV Plus, um, originally premiering at Sundance this year. Still, which is a Michael J. Fox movie. It's a documentary about and with the participation of Michael J. Fox and his life and career, and famously his struggle with um, Parkinson's disease. And I there's no real synopsis of the film. It is mostly him as a talking head and telling us about his life and about his early career and his skyrocketing ascent to fame in the late 80s and early 90s, um, and then his diagnosis with Parkinson's and his having to scale back and how he lives with that disease today. And let me tell you, if you would like to be emotionally devastated today, have I got the film for you?
Mm,
Because this
totally.
movie is completely devastating, but also uplifting. It's really interesting. Parkinson's is such a terrible disease. I don't know if anyone has anyone who's suffered from it, but I do. Um, and it's actually very difficult for me to watch. Um,
Mm,
uh, because it's a disease that eventually robs you of your ability to, like, it traps you in your body. Like, it doesn't take away necessarily, although it doesn't necessarily take away your cognition, but it does take away your ability to willfully move or communicate. And I had a really hard time watching this movie,
yeah.
but it is wonderful because Michael J. Fox seems to be such a relentless optimist, which I think is in line with what I remember of his performances and of his, you know, um, public persona when I was young and when he was a young hotshot actor. Um, but he seems to be so like relentlessly optimistic and positive and sort of just accepting of his situation, that it becomes something. Even though I would say it's honestly maybe a little bit slight in terms of the depths to which it goes into all these subjects, it's still quite affecting, I would say.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know. How
it's
did
not
you
really.
feel about it?
So I've got two types of feeling about this. I've got an emotional reaction and a technical reaction, and the I also found it a difficult watch emotionally because I always talk about how much Star Wars has been important to me, but I think growing up, it's fair to say that Back to the Future probably had an even bigger impact on me. Not just like Star Wars took me away and let me dream about sci-fi stuff, but Back to the Future I've used in every bit of filmmaking I've ever done, every bit of acting I've ever done. I'm always trying to channel what Michael J. Fox does in all the Back to the Futures, and then because of that, I watched him in T Wolf and The Secret of My Success. I watched hundreds of times, and Doc
Hmm.
Hollywood, and just that era of Michael J. Fox being so snappy and so funny and so genuine, and also as a physical actor. Like I think um, one of the great reasons Back to the Future works is that you've got two of the best physical screen actors with Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox. Like are just so perfect at telling stories with the way they react and the way they move. And if you want evidence of that, watch the footage of Eric. Who was Marty before Eric?
Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz. So the footage they shot of Eric Stoltz and then replace him with Michael J. Fox because they wanted the spark. They wanted more of a spark than the serious take that Eric was giving them. And just you can, it's plain as day what he brings to a screen with this kind of energy. And when I was growing up, Back to the Future was everything to me. It was everything I wanted to try and say in stories, and all three of them in their own different ways. So it's really hard to kind of describe the effects this man and his stories has had on me. So watching this, the cruelty of Parkinson's, taking someone who can only express through controlled movement and snappy responses, having exactly those things taken away from him is like almost unbearable to watch. And um like he is his kind of attitude towards dealing with it is so what's that?
It's
Motivating,
matter of
refreshing. I
fact.
don't know.
It's
So matter
very
of
like
fact, and he
very open and
and to see,
honest and matter of fact.
and it was there was a few things I didn't know there as well, and I do appreciate it's not a documentary about Parkinson's. It's a documentary about Michael J. Fox learning he has Parkinson's, and so I knew it'd be difficult going in. But what really blew me away, my technical reaction to this is I thought it was so cleverly done. The guy interviewing Michael J. Fox has clearly been his friend for a long, long time. So it was a very honest way to speak to each other. But it was also him reading out clips from his book, but over footage that had been edited together with new footage of like the
Yeah.
Michael J.
So,
Fox actor behind him being edited together to tell the story that he was describing from all of his different movies as well. And I thought that was just the most brilliantly done way to convey that story. So technically, this film blew me away. But there's one part where his friend's like, "Why are you doing this now?" And that part just broke my heart because he doesn't respond. He just looks down and he just knows the thing that really got to me is that you can see in his eyes how scared he is of what's happening to him and how it's taking
mhm.
him away. And he talks about the dopamine releasing drugs are being poured back into yourself, and that feeling of being not you, like trapped in this body. It's just devastating, absolutely devastating. And to have that happen in your late 20s to a person who's so fundamentally about expression. And also, side note, it's another story about a kid discovering meaning in drama class and a drama teacher changing someone's life by saying, "Hey, you should do this." And I wonder how many more stories we're going to get of that happening over and over and over. before drama classes are treated equally to like maths classes and English classes. But that's a different
It's
rant
a whole other.
completely. I could
Yeah.
completely get, but I just loved him. There's one point where the interviewer said, "So in drama class, because he joked about being short, in drama class you can be tall," and he said, "In drama class you can be anything." And I
Yeah.
just need that like emblazoned on every school in the country. And it was I was just fascinated by the way it went through his life and told his story with a mix of him reading his book, the mix of his movies, the soundtracks of his movies, but also the new footage that they shot to fit it all together. I thought was just brilliant, just mind-blowingly good, really
So I'll
well
say that
planned and shot.
I found some of the reenactment stuff to be uh, it's not bad exactly. That's the wrong word, but it definitely every time it cut from like him now to archive footage of him in the past or like footage of him from one of his shows or movies and then cut to like this reenacted footage. um, I found that kicked me out of it a little bit. I found that like I understood it's going to work for people and it clearly worked for you, but I found it a little bit, it just sort of jarring every time they went to it. um, and yeah, that's my main criticism here because everything you're saying is correct, basically. That like it is the story of a person who found meaning in the ability to express themselves and is having that slowly stripped away from him. And that moment where he's asked, why he's doing it now, and he just sort of looks down, you can tell it's because he's not going to be able to for much longer. Like
Mm,
the disease never stops, right? um, he's in that horrible race with time. um, and I do wonder, I think it's probably a great thing. So the person who made the film, whose name is Davis Guggenheim, is
mhm.
actually Elizabeth Shue's husband.
No,
So
I didn't know that.
so yeah, I would say they've probably been friends for quite a long time. He's been married.
Mhm,
Davis Guggenheim has been married to Elizabeth Shue since 1994, I think I looked it up, 94, 95. So they've
mhm,
definitely known each other for a long time. And I think he's just so, again, so open and honest and pragmatic about what's happening to him. And you can tell that he's still this like lovable, quick-witted guy. And every time
mhm.
he like stumbles over some one-liner that he's going to say, it's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, oh,
But
it
when he
is.
does get one out, it's also hilarious. And one of the first scenes of
Mm,
the film, he's walking down the street and a woman says hi, and it distracts him enough that, or doesn't distract him enough, but he like loses his footing and falls. And when she's checking on him, he's like, "Nice to meet you. You knocked me off my feet." And it's just such like a wonderfully sweet moment. And its film is like
yeah,
full of those, and it totally
yeah, it
lines
is.
up with like. There's another great clip um, that I remember. I don't know why I remember this, but I remember watching. He won an Emmy at one point for Family Ties, and he got up on stage to accept it. He said, "Wow, I feel 4 feet tall," and just and like you you get the impression that he's always been this way, and it's
Mm,
again, it's just sort of heartrending to watch
mm,
it being stripped away. And they show enough of his work through the late 90s because he was diagnosed in 91 and now it's 2023. But he continued to work for a long time before he even told anyone, and then continued to work after he had told everyone. And if you
mhm,
watch closely, knowing, you can
mhm,
totally see, the ticks and the
mm,
difficulties he's describing in the beginning are clearly happening. In particular, in
mm.
the clips from Spin City, which was a great show,
Yeah.
by the way. You can totally see he's often complaining about his left arm, and if you watch him in the show, like he's very
Mm,
much deliberate with his left arm in every single clip. And
mhm,
I can't imagine what that must be like. Um, but it is so refreshing that he's so open and frank about it. And
mhm.
every time he sits down for the review, like, what happened there? He's like, oh, I bashed my face in, or I hurt myself again,
Yeah,
or I
yeah.
fell down whatever it is. He's just like, yeah, this is just what happens when you have Parkinson's. Um, and yeah, it's again kind of a heartbreaking film.
It is. It's
Um,
heartbreaking, and I was expecting to be at the end of this to be absolutely in a puddle, but what I found, what I really liked actually, is that the last kind of 10 minutes, it does end really upbeat, like with his family, and he's talking about how he couldn't be still in his life, and this whole he's like framing Parkinson's as this wake up call to be present, like to and I'm not sure I would ever have this strength of mind to treat something like this as the way he's framing it in a positive sense. I'm not sure I've got that in me, and to see him with his family, his beautiful, amazing wife, and his kids, and just the relationship he has with his family, and it does end on a bit more of an not optimistic, because there's no, as he said, there's no winning this race, but in it doesn't end in a devastating way, and I did appreciate that because it was very hard watching this. Like
I think
it's
that's part of his character, right? Like he is
yeah, yeah,
so tremendously optimistic and open and frank that I think if it was anyone else, maybe it would have ended on like a dour moment. But
mm-hmm,
and it does end on a cut to black, but it does
mm-hmm,
feel it does feel hopeful. It does
mm,
feel
it does, yeah,
kind of wonderful that like because our view of Parkinson's is one that rightly so that it robs you of your agency. Um, but he's clearly making the best of it. And
mm,
all the discussion of how he used to hide from it, and then when he switched to no longer hiding from it, and just again being, like you said,
mm,
present in his life, all of those scenes are just wonderful. Every
yeah,
time it cuts
yeah,
to him and uh, wow, I totally blanked it. Every time it cuts to a shot of like him just interacting with Tracy Paul and his wife or any of his four kids,
mm,
it's
mm.
always so wonderful, and he's
Yeah,
so
so
like
much love there.
so open with them, and they're so supportive, and just like yeah,
Mm,
um, couldn't couldn't happen to a nicer guy apparently. Uh, but like yeah,
mm.
I don't know, man. This is a tough watch, and but I'm glad that I did, and
Yeah,
I hope lots of other people do. I imagine Michael J. Fox is as important to many people as he is to you and I. Back to the
mm,
Future was a staple in my household when I was young.
mm-hmm, mm,
Um, in fact, you asked earlier, I think, in our bonus episode about like what were the films that were constantly on when I was a kid, and I should have just said Back to the Future,
yeah.
because it was always on. We without hyperbole, we wore out a videotape of Back to the Future. Um, so yeah, it's difficult to watch, but it's also kind of inspiring to watch because he's handling it in the way he's handling it. And
I
I hope that
the
lots of people watch this and realize that
oh,
it's not a hopeless it's it's a terminal diagnosis, but it's not a hopeless one, and you can still you know retain parts of yourself in your life.
mm.
And I think that would
It's
be
almost like when he accepted it as and came out in the press conference, and well, not came out, but told the world about it in the press conference, and then allowed it to inform his acting instead of trying to hide it under his acting, and he just seemed so much freer, like in the clips they showed with him acting with full symptoms, and
well,
then
and
and
he
it
literally
actually being a story point.
says that too. Like at one point
Yeah,
he when he's talking about after the press conference about how he was able to just exist in a way that he hadn't been before.
yeah.
Um, and
So,
also, he I think it was right around the time I think he went sober not that long before that, um,
mm,
and just all of these self destructive things he was doing to
mm,
hide it from himself and his family and the world were able to stop,
mm,
and it seems like that was all the better.
yeah, for sure.
And
So, what star? How many stars are you going with for Still?
oh, four. It's a 4-star movie.
Okay,
Yeah, for you.
I it's five for me. Like it's I really connected with that. I didn't have the issue you did with the being taken out of it. I thought it was really well put together and edited together and shot, the new and the new shots to match the old shots and then edited together with the sounds and everything. I thought was really clever, and it was just, I don't know, spending time with someone who has touched you and shaped you creatively in ways you couldn't possibly describe, and then watching him like trying becoming positive about this tremendously negative thing is inspiring to me. So I thought it was
Hmm.
brilliantly done. So it's 5 stars for me.
Yeah, it certainly continues Apple's like. It's interesting because we recently ripped apart an Apple TV Plus movie, but they actually have a very high hit rate in terms of TV and
Yeah,
movies.
they
And
do
this
tend to. Yeah,
this
yeah,
continues that they do tend to pick stuff that um, that works and is good, and this continues that. So it's out now on Apple TV Plus, and it is our wholehearted recommendation that you watch it.
yeah, for sure.
Even if you're not a
Ah,
huge fan, it's a pretty inspiring doc, and I think you should watch it.
hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Totally agree.
yeah.
Good.
Alrighty.
What have we got notable coming up this week? What's on next week? I think Silo's starting. I'm interested in having a look at that. Have you got any
Silo
TV
is
shows?
Silo is started, and the first three
Oh,
episodes are good.
oh, are they? Are you
Yeah.
already 3 ahead of me? Of course you
Well, they released three all at once, and you know, the upside of not having kids is that when my wife says, "Hey, do you want to watch this dystopian science fiction show, all three episodes all at once?" I can be like, "Yes, I do."
That doesn't exist in my life anymore, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's nice.
but it is just again to Apple's history of at the very least well produced stuff continues
Hmm.
with the show. Like it's gorgeous to look at. It's incredibly well acted. Um, but yeah, I don't know what we're going to be talking about next week yet, so I'm not going to answer that
Hmm.
question. But there will be
Sweet.
something, and we will be back.
What's up? This is we're recording on Sunday. My last question for you is: what is your Sunday night TV now? Because you used to religiously watch the HBO Sunday shows when Game of Thrones was going and something else was happening. Like, what's your Sunday night TV in the Simpson house these days?
I mean, it's still HBO because right now we're on episode 8 of 10 of the last season of Succession, which if anyone who hasn't watched this, like it has been legitimately one of the best things I've watched all year this year.
Mhm.
Um, each episode outdoes itself, and they made a lot of really interesting creative choices throughout this season, including the death of a major character that we all kind of knew would probably die before the show ended, but we had no idea. Yeah, it's. I can't talk about it without spoiling it. But
Okay.
it is. This season has been like, and the beautiful thing about it is that literally every episode has had a moment for one of the major characters where I've gone, oh, so that's going to be their Emmy reel, like that's going to be the clip, like that is going to be the clip,
That's cool.
but not in the way where you're like, oh, that's going to be the clip. It's going to be like, yep, that's the one. That is the one where he sealed up his Emmy or Golden Globe or whatever you want to call it. And it's been an absolute joy to watch, even though you're just watching terrible broken people be terrible broken people. It's 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 a very interesting show, and for anyone who's listening, it is my contention is that it is Arrested Development played straight. So do with that information what you will. It's
What? Oh.
yeah,
Now
you know,
that's a hell of a pitch.
I mean, think about it. It's the show where there's a large family business. There's a patriarch in trouble. There's three children who are squabbling for control and access to that business and the funds it generates, and everyone is constantly manipulating everyone else. It's just Arrested Development played straight.
Well, now I'm really motivated to watch it. You've sold it to me.
Yeah. Anyway, but I think that's where
Good.
we're gonna call it for the
Yeah.
day. So again, Evil Dead Rise and Still both recommended. Both go check them both out. Evil Dead Rise is still in cinemas and is also available to rent or purchase, and still is
The
on Apple
police
TV
agree.
Plus. Was that?
The police agree.
Oh yeah. Well, it's Vancouver, and I live near the hospital, so it's actually a ambulance.
Oh, of
But
course.
anyway, thank you so much for listening. Everyone who's old here and everyone who's new here, we're happy you're all here. So we hope you stick around. If you would like to support us, the easiest way to do that would be to give us a like, give us a 5-star review, or just subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. Those things help us show up in charts and all kinds of places, and that helps immeasurably. And if you would like to support us more directly, we do have a Patreon, and you do get all patrons do get access to our bonus talks every week now. You can find us on the socials. The show is at Awesome Friday CA, wherever is important. And I am at Matthew AF, and Simon is at Temporary Pen on the Twitters, and me also on the Instagrams. And I was going to say something else. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, we record this here in Vancouver on the traditional ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. And one more time, thank you so much for listening on this awesome Friday.
Bye.